The secret word is Dragula. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Stay Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
So I think for now, Devin, my journey has come to a bit of an end, a good ending, a solid ending. But I've been up the mountain of dew. I've seen all the answers.
Oh, I actually have a mountain of dew that I can climb, and I was planning on doing it later tonight.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known that you had set off on your expedition. I would have joined you.
Is it the piss yellow one?
No, I've had the piss yellow one. I had it last summer when it had a different name.
Well, so yeah, Mountain Dew piss yellow. It was a weird marketing choice on their part, but they said, you know what people really like is they love that warm piss.
They love wet work, actually, as it turns out.
So ongoing saga of me and Mountain Dew. Well, this got reinvigorated in me because I went to a franchise out here. There's like a burrito franchise in Utah, and one of the things that they have is they've got their own unique Mountain Dew. Hold on, I'm pulling the picture up because it's like goji berry Mountain Dew.
I've had the goji berry Mountain Dew. It was unique somewhere else before it went to your weird burrito chain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and who knows? Maybe because they're in different markets, maybe they could be unique in different places, right?
That's true. Yes.
But yeah, man. So I found that the other day, and I was like, well, here we go again. So I got that.
While you're looking up Mountain Dews, can you look up the name of the Circle K exclusive? I know it's got purple in the name.
Oh, I've not tried a purple one. See, now here we go. No. I've come to a good conclusion for the time being, because then what happened out here? We talked about a couple weeks ago about how the Smith's, Kroger, Ralph's Meyer brand out here, they were carrying some exclusive flavors like thrashed apple and things like that. I had done the flaming hot. They carried the entire line of Baja flavoring.
They were a Target exclusive last summer, just for anybody who's keeping score.
The Bajas?
The Bajas, yeah. There was the Baja Punch and the Baja. I don't remember what the yellow one was called last year.
So Baja Gold was the name of it this year. Okay. I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, that was one of the many euphemisms we used for piss. I don't know, but you grab that bottle and it's just basically glowing in your hand, and like, I gotta
it tastes
say,
like
though,
pina
right now,
coladas last year. Does it still taste like pina coladas?
I mean, if by tasting like pina coladas, like you mean taste very heavily of just pineapple soda, and like most cheap cheap pina coladas will just taste like a lot of pineapple, then yes.
I don't know. That's what they say that the flavor is supposed to be. So
I've got your berry flavor here.
Yeah, what is it? It's purple something. It's crazy.
Hold on. It's they don't want me to know, Devin.
They don't, because you don't have Circle K.
It's on Amazon. They want me to order it on Amazon. Purple Thunder.
Purple Thunder. I have 2 bottles of that ready to go.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I had a whole intro before you just went into this whole Mountain Dew saga.
Yeah, so the conclusion is, after all of this, the one thing I have not been able to get a hold of out here, and the reason that I've decided to step away from this journey now that I've found it, is that I finally got a bottle of just straight up Baja Blast. Like, it was like the one thing that you could not find around here, and for a while I just thought it was just not available. I just thought they had other Baja flavors out, but then some people caught wind of it out there for me. My feet on the ground, my eyes in the sky, saw some somewhere. And so I was in search of it for the last few weeks, and I finally found one. So I need to. So the other side of all of this is, I don't know if we ever talked about the fact that, like, I don't drink soda anymore. Like, not like religiously. Like, I'm not like, oh, soda, gross, it's gonna rot your insides. Like, obviously not, right? But I just.
But obviously, soda does rot your insides. That's not what Sejan is saying. He's just saying he's not a teetotaler thumper, or whatever I guess you would call that.
I will have a rum and Coke on a regular basis, right? Like, I'm not opposed to soda. I just like, when we were kids, we used to drink that shit by the case a day, right? Like, I mean, we had friends that had built a Mountain Dew Minotaur out of Mountain Dew boxes because we drank through so many cases in one weekend. They were like, we could do something with this. We
that's
used
really
to drink that
doing
shit
the
all the
do.
time. Yeah. So it's also just been a wild experience for my tum-tum, drinking all the sugary soda for the last couple of weeks. But I needed to step away, and I decided when I finally found an actual bottle of Baja Blast, I was like, this is it. This is the sign that I'm done for now.
I still have an intro, ladies and gentlemen, but Siegen talking about buying a bottle of Baja Blast does inspire me to tell a story. It's one of my favorite stories. And it invokes a name I don't know if we've ever actually said on the podcast. So that's like maybe double points all around. You remember Joe Short?
Oh, man. We must have talked about the shorts at some point.
I would imagine so, but in case we haven't, this is a Joe Short story, and it's one of my favorite Joe Short stories. And everybody knew Joe Short as kind of the it actor in our theater program where we went to school. I don't know why I'm playing the pronoun game about the university, but clearly sharing his name. But that's the role I've decided to play today. And Joe, while he was the it actor, to me, he was the other guy who worked in the scene shop. And when I say worked in the scene shop, I mean everybody was expected to kind of volunteer in the scene shop, but there were two people who were like full-on employed by the scene shop.
Expected to be there at a certain time and not allowed to leave before a certain time.
Exactly. We had shift work. Like we had you guys are assigned to be here. I think we worked like 10 to 3 every day of the week.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I was just voluntold to be there on a pretty regular basis. So
yeah, well, I'm sorry that you weren't. I took all the money, and I'm sorry. Well, Joe Short actually took all the money because he had been doing it the year before I got there, and then just kept doing it. But then when Julius is like, "We have another one of those actual working positions, and I'd like you to take it." Julius, another name that we probably have never said on the show. So Joe Short and I worked together in the scene shop. Like all the time, it was awesome. Like we were coworkers for this long time, and one day when we're at work, he comes in. Now, Joe Short, you don't know him, right, listener? Maybe you do know him, but he was sort of the happiest, most optimistic person that I've ever known.
Basically the opposite of me in all ways. Tall, handsome, successful, happy.
You can't appreciate the sunshine if you never see the rain, Siege. You're my little rain cloud. Okay. But yeah, so Joe was already this optimistic, full of positivity dude. And he comes into the scene shop one Monday. So it's Monday, too. So you also need to expect that, like, we've just had a weekend, and yet you're coming into the scene shop in twice as good a mood as you usually show up to the scene shop. So I'm like, Joe, what is going on? And he's like, my mind is blown. I have just learned about something, and I need to share it with somebody. I need to share it with you. We need to make this happen. So I'm like, I have no idea what's about to come down the pike from Joe Short as we're there for work on a Monday morning. And he goes, did you know that Taco Bell has an exclusive flavor of Mountain Dew? Now, the Baja Blast was introduced to Taco Bell, I want to say like 2003.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The year on this story, though, is not too far off from that, right?
It's 2007.
Okay.
So it's been 4 years. It's been a high school career since it come out. But Joe Short had, for the first time ever, heard about it. Like, he had never known about it. And really, it talks about the type of life that Joe Short was leading, as opposed to me, the guy who once filled up his baseball cap with Baja Blast at the Taco Bell and then got thrown out while I was chugging it out of my baseball cap. Just because I'm like, I want to see if this will work. This seems like a good idea. But, you know, it was theft. That's admitted theft on the Save Report. Because I just took off my ball cap, filled it with Baja Blast, and just went to frickin' town on it. And then I was escorted out by probably somebody I went to high school with, if we're going to be completely honest. So he was so excited about this new Mountain Dew, and like I didn't want to shake him. I didn't want to be his Sajin. I didn't want to be his rain cloud. So I'm like, oh yeah, they do. And he's like, yeah. Would you go with me to Taco Bell to try it after work today? Because like he didn't understand how Taco Bell worked, which is really not hyper surprising when you consider a product like. When you consider literally everything about him, this is a guy who drove a wicked cool little like red car and was super happy because he was able to get the vanity license plate 007. Like this guy, I love Joe Short. I don't think about him that often, but whenever somebody talks about buying Baja Blast, I'm reminded of the story. So we work our shift and it flies by because we're looking forward to this epic journey to go get the Baja Blast that is like brand fucking new to him. He is so like the whole time he's talking about like I can't believe that there would be a flavor exclusive to a restaurant. Like all these things that like I've come to terms, it's been my world, but like it's this moment. So we go, and the closest Taco Bell, we went to the University of Rhode Island. The closest Taco Bell to the University of Rhode Island is in Wakefield, and it's a KFC Taco Bell combination, boy, right?
Ooh.
A Contaco Bell,
Yeah.
as they're called warmly. I actually love calling them Contaco Bells. So he's like, all right, we're going to go to this one. And I'm like, oh, okay. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're probably not going to have it because, you know, the weird little hybrid babies, sometimes they don't have the exclusive stuff to the restaurants.
Right? They don't have the full kitchen.
So we go to the
Their
Contaco
mind's
Bell.
on chicken as well as tacos. It never ends well.
The weirdest thing is that the chicken tacos at the Contaco Bells always are the worst chicken tacos. I'm like, you guys literally have the best chicken. I mean, the best chicken in the Yum Brands group, let's be honest.
Yeah,
I prefer Popeyes or Bojangles or Raising Cane's. But literally anywhere but KFC is my first choice for fast food chicken. Except for Chick-fil-A, they can go fuck off.
Chick-fil-A can
but they don't even register for me at this point, and that's another story for another time. But yeah, so we go, and he's like, I want to try this Baja Blast, and the girl on the other side of the machine's like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't carry that at this location. And this kid, he collapsed. He was so disappointed because all he wanted was to try the Baja Blast. So we return back to the school in defeat, and I'm like, man, I gotta bring back Joe Short's smile. I need to bring back Joe Short's smile. So what I did
I don't have to do much in this world, but I have to protect this precious naivete.
Well, it's one of those moments where, like, if I don't return the smile to Joe Short, it could be the end of days. This could be a significant event in human history. This could be a turning point. This is a Nexus event. I need to restore the smile to Joe Short. So what I do is I go to the Taco Bell that's in my hometown, Coventry, Rhode Island, and I order a 2 giant Baja Blasts because I know that they have it without ice. I go across the street to the Cumberland Farms. Local references, by the way, get your local work. Pro tip. I go across the street to the Cumberland Farms and I buy a liter of Pepsi Cola, right? So it's a clear bottle. And I take it home. I empty out the Pepsi. I'm not a Pepsi drinker, so I don't know what happened to that Pepsi. I probably dumped it down the toilet. I just have to be honest with everybody here. I probably just threw that Pepsi away. And then I cleaned the bottle significantly, made sure that the bottle was clean so that there was no Pepsi in it.
Good,
and then
not fit for human consumption. Bad.
And then I refilled it with the Baja Blast from Taco Bell, and then I printed out a label, like the Baja Blast labeling from the internet, and I taped it around. So I made Joe Short a bottle of Baja Blast.
Why didn't you just bring him the fucking cup? Why?
Because it was like...
Why did it have to turn into a craft project?
It turned into a craft project because, like, by the time I was back, he had rehearsal, right? Because he was the it actor. He did play all the roles. So he had rehearsal that night. So it's not like we could go off and pick up Taco Bell somewhere else. Like, he had to be back to school. And I'm like, well, I can't go to rehearsal with it, right? So I need to go and I need to present him this bottle of Baja Blast, right? Like, I fought through and I came up with a whole freaking story of, like, I had to fight in order to get you a bottle of the stuff because it only comes at Taco Bell. You know, I figured some lore would help restore that smile. I presented it to him on a velvet pillow.
you've now turned this beautiful gesture into a dark deed.
Yeah, but it's not like, but obviously, like, I then come clean afterwards. But I presented to him Velvet Pillow, this bottle of Baja Blast, and he's so happy that he got it. And it's like, and it's just one of those moments where I remember, like, I made a bottle of Baja Blast. And then the best part is the epilogue to this whole thing is he pours out a glass of it, he takes a sip, and he's like, nah, it's not for me. And, like, on some level, I knew it wasn't going to be for him, but
maybe
it was
he has
still...
one of those genes that makes Baja Blast
taste like soap. Well, it is heavy on the cilantro. Anyway, welcome to the Say Report. This is the show about everything, and I'm a real big fan of these episodes, because this is an episode where we come back from a break. Now, it wasn't a huge break or anything like that. We just didn't record for a week, and we launched out to you out there in podcast land, one of our time capsule episodes. But I always come to these episodes like, I have a habit of explaining what the show is every episode. And if you hate that, let me know on the socials and I can stop doing that. But on one of these weeks where, like, I haven't been in front of a microphone for 2 weeks conservatively, I really feel like I need to walk everybody through what it is that we do here. So I appreciate Seijin knowing that and being, like, preemptive and getting me on the subject of do. I do appreciate you for that. I do still feel the need to address the fact that I tried to call our shot with our last time capsule episode, hoping that we would get to August with it, and we didn't. We fell 3 weeks short of an August release for it, and I apologize for that. But what I do not apologize for is reminding, hopefully everyone, because I know I reminded myself, that How I Met Your Father existed as a show. Like, I just forgot about it.
Yeah, well, so what's going on with it, Dev? Like, last I heard, it was generally mediocrely received.
Yeah, I mean, it still got greenlit for that for a second season of 20 episodes. I don't know anything else about it. I just know that...
But it did get the 20 episodes.
It did get the 20 episodes, yeah, which we talked about in the time capsule episode, because it had happened immediately following the end of the episode, the first season. But I just wanted to, like... I had forgotten the show existed, and then listening back, because I tend to listen back with the time capsule episodes, it was nice being reminded about it. Yeah. But then, like, that's kind of it. Like, I didn't like rush out and rewatch it or anything like that, and it's not like I'm holding my breath waiting in anticipation for the season 2. No. It's just like, but what I get to do, it's not patting us on the back. It's just like, I had legitimately forgotten that it existed, and I need to admit that. I need to come forward and admit that I'd forgotten that this was a show. This is the show that we did 2 episodes semi-devoted to that has essentially been Thanos snapped out of existence for me. But there is a dangling thread that I am willing right now for you, Seijin, to wrap up regarding everything related to How I Met Your Mother, How I Met Your Father, and Pamela Fryman. And that's Pretty Smart.
Yeah.
Because I finally watched through all of Pretty Smart.
Yeah, man.
And I have to admit I loved it. I'm very upset that it's canceled.
Yeah, well, so it's one of the only shows in all of the Netflix madness that really truly got the axe that, like, that I think kind of was unresolved. There's a lot of things out there that can still potentially get the axe. I'm not saying that like the Netflix massacre is over. I feel like it wasn't as bad as everybody made it out to seem. You know, like they mentioned, like, oh no, we're losing all of these animated projects, and then like within this past year have dropped like 3 more animated shows. So like, okay, clearly.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because we always talk about canceled via finished, and all of these animated projects that we're losing. They were mostly, that announcement went, we're giving them a final season to resolve the series.
Or we had bought this thing, we optioned it, we piloted it, and we've decided that we need to dial back on animation, so we're not going to give it. Because that was the other thing. Yeah. A lot of animated projects in the works that people were like, oh man, they just got rid of all. But that's how pilots go, folks. Like you know how many shows get piloted out there that we never see?
I mean, we see a lot of them here at the Say Report because I go and search for them. One of them that I've dug through my archives to watch again with the family is Mockingbird Lane.
Oh,
the
the
Eddie
failed
Izzard,
Munster,
Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi remake of The Munsters from like 2011. It aired on October 26th, 2011. Maybe it was earlier than that, but I think he has an iPad, and not iPad, as one of the jokes in it.
Yeah.
So since iPads, I believe, were 2009.
2009.
Yeah, we were in college still.
That's true. That's true.
Because I remember everybody being like, "We live in Star Trek now," and I'm like, "What a dumb thing to say."
I mean, he did steal the idea from Star Trek.
Everybody knows that. Yes, but it's.
Oh man!
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we live in Star Trek. Still, we got a long way to go. We have a long way to go. 13 years after the introduction of the iPad to be anywhere close to Star Trek?
Universal peace and the erasure of like fiscal responsibility. Like, please, can we fast forward to those parts?
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I mean, what about like semi-racial harmony? Mm-hmm. I say semi-racial harmony because the Klingons are pretty much a XB for African Americans, and the Romulans are basically an XB for Asian Americans. So.
Yeah, for a show that's so heavily based for a universe so heavily based on the idea that like we finally came together and that's what allowed us to travel into space. But once we got out to space, we decided we were just going to be space racist instead. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And then like one step beyond, it's like we're not space racist because Romulans eat the placenta of their children. Like, no, Romulans are basically just a stand-in for something that we hated on Earth.
And Tom Cruise is just a Romulan.
We already knew that, right? Like that's why he's so excited whenever he gets married and jumping on couches. That's another Romulan tradition. I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know enough about Star Trek to keep this joke going. But
Pamela Fryman and pretty smart, and the idea of it not getting at least the second half of its season, right? I mean, this answers at least one big question that we've always kind of toyed with is when Netflix does their split season stuff, like are they filming the whole thing and then holding it off just because of wanting to like build momentum, or are they legitimately testing shit out sometimes? And it turns out they're just testing stuff out sometimes.
I mean, it's strange because it never everything out there. I wasn't there when it was new, right? Were you there when Pretty Smart first came out?
Yeah, we watched it pretty much within the first few weeks that it landed.
So was it initially like part one and all of that? Because all of the marketing, when you look at it now, makes it look like it would always meant to be just a single season.
No, okay. It was always part one.
Okay, that's interesting.
They did that thing where they put 10 episodes up and they called it part one, and then part two coming later this year was always there, like when they first put it up and all that. So
by the time I came to it, that's a thing to just be aware of, that they can just retroactively change all of that stuff.
I mean, that kind of shit's gone out the window, right? Like, I mean, we are now retroactively changing movie titles after people have seen them, right? Like, Live, Die, Repeat, like notoriously.
Can I tell you something? I'm really pissed off right now. I do that box office game. I know I tried to get you into it, and you just weren't part of it. And yesterday, it was October 26th. Weird that number just came up again. 2001. It was the weekend of October 26th, 2001.
My birthday.
Yeah. Congratulations. Happy birthday, Sejin. All that year ago. And first of all, what an indicative representation of just how much cinema changed in just a month after 9/11. Like, we talk about it a lot, but oh my God, the 5 movies that were up there, 2 of them I forgot were even movies. This is just one of those things where I'm like, it was just there. But what pissed me off, and it's about that retroactive of everything, is very I read the tagline and I'm like, oh, it's 13 Ghosts, right? I knew that 13 Ghosts was a 2001 movie, so I type in 13 Ghosts. I type out the word 13 and then Ghosts, and I'm like, oh no, wait, it had that weird spelling where the 1 and the 3 were the T and E of teen. So I type it in that way, and it doesn't come up. So then, I don't know if people are doing these games, these daily Wordle games, but with trivia, or if it might just be something that we've tapped into. I'm sure other people are doing it. I'm sure those people who don't like Wordle have probably found their little niche or niche of their daily trivia game. And I hope that you have. But what I really don't like about like Framed is the one that we definitely all do at the Say Report. We even played in our Discord.
Right.
The thing that you need to remember is if you type in a movie title and it does not come up, there's no possible way that it is the answer for that day.
Right.
Like there is very much a set database of movies that is loaded up to the game of Framed. So if you're like, well, this kind of looks like Jumanji, but then you type in Jumanji and it doesn't come up, you're like, okay, so it's somewhere else. It has to be a different movie.
But more importantly, these kinds of weirder movies where like you have these things with like, oh, there was a number spelling in that, right? Like Cradle to the Grave and shit like that. Like you're like typing it in and you're like, oh wait, it's not coming up, but I know it's this movie, and then you remind yourself, oh, it's this thing. And so like it saves you from kind of on Framed, that library, that autofill attempt, that like whatever it's going to be referred to as, like that kind of saves you. It's a really nice little kind of tool to actually use to figure out what's going on sometimes. Also lets you know if you're completely off base because you type in Jumanji and it doesn't come up as any of the answers or something. You're just like, oh, it can't be that.
Well, like, and then I feel like an idiot because the movie is It, right? The spoilers. This already happened, so we're not spoiling a Framed for anybody. And then like when I realize that it's It because I see freaking Pennywise as like the last image and I'm like, what an idiot. And then I go retroactive and I'm like, oh, so of course it kind of looked like Jumanji because it's a northern New England town.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, why when Jumanji didn't come up, I should have like maybe followed down to other movies that take place in towns like that. Like, why didn't I guess School Ties? Well, that's because there were modern cars in it, but that's not important. But it is. It's one of those things that helps. And Seven is a good example because I think Seven came up in Framed, and the spelling that they wanted was SE numeral 7 EN. Right. So then I type in 13 Ghosts the regular way, nothing. I type in 13 Ghosts the stylized spelling way that it is on the poster and in the movie.
And this is on the what's this box office one called?
This is Box Office Game. It's boxofficega.me if you want to play. It's called the Box Office Game, and what you basically try to figure out is the top 5 movies for a given weekend, and it's fun. Like it triggers a part of my trivia mind that has gone dormant since like the Leonard Maltin app has become deprecated.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it is so heavily focused on dates, whereas Framed is focused on the visuals of the movie. So that Framed works for me. Box Office Game does not, because in my brain I cannot think of dates. The other night we got into like a whole conversation in the house about whether or not I was 36 or 37, and like I was trying to do the math, but everybody was throwing numbers at me. It took us 20 minutes to figure out.
Siegen, you're 35. You're not 36 or 37.
Going to be 36 or 37 this year. Sorry,
you're going to
be clear.
No,
going to be 36.
You're not. I'm 36 right now. You're a year younger than me.
When did you turn 36?
I turned 36 in January. So I'm going to turn 37 in January. You're going to be 35 this year.
Here we go, folks. Anyway, yeah, so this is why the Box Office Game doesn't work for me, right? Is exactly this conversation. So I just can't.
That's why I've never done this to you before. I'm sorry to blow up your age like that. I've always liked when you're like a guy in his 30s. Oh, wow, Siege.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. I did not realize. Yeah, you're 34 right now.
No, yeah. I just like ages and years
doesn't work, and that's fine.
To me. They just don't stick. So like when somebody's like, "What was the top movie in 2003?" I'm just like, I don't know. You could be telling me like the French Connection or like fucking The Matrix or I don't know.
Yeah, it could be The French Connection or French Kiss. I don't know. And the reason I like Box Office Game is. Because it does kind of crib the Leonard Maltin game a little bit, because you can get like the tagline and then the actors, so It feels like a way to sort of play that game in a way that's completely different from the Leonard Maltin game, because that one you specifically start from the bottom of the cast list, not the top of it. But that's not important. What is important is I kept going and being like, it's 13 Ghosts. I know it's 13 Ghosts, to the point where I finally just gave up, right? I had guessed everything else. I knew everything else. And I'm like, I don't know what else. I finally got the whole plot of the movie, which talks about the guy who built this house and trapped inside of it of 12 ghosts. And I'm just like, it's 13 ghosts. I don't know how to type the title. And then when I give up, 13 ghosts comes up and it's numeral 13 ghosts. And I'm like, that is not a spelling that has ever happened for that movie.
Well, what's weird is that is, I think, actually the spelling of the original film, right?
Right.
The old black and white one.
Yeah.
But not the 2000s remake with like Matthew Lillard and Monk there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, why would I ever think that? It was so frustrating, like, to come up against that. So when you talk about these movies where the title is changed retroactively, the one that I think of most recently is Birds of Prey, or The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, to just Birds of Prey, or Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, because I've seen both.
Yeah.
Because why? I don't know. But again, Box Office Game, I needed to write out the whole title in order to get that one correct. Like, Birds of Prey wasn't enough. So, I don't know. It's been getting under my skin, the Box Office Game. And I just wanted to let you know that, because I know you're not playing it.
Yeah, no, I completely I understand why. It gets under my skin too. Oh man.
Yeah, so I feel like we were, I don't know. So yeah, so that's something. I don't even know what we were talking about. Pretty Smart. Yeah, so watching Pretty Smart, I really was down on the first episode. It did not work for me because it felt just so ridiculous how stupid they made the pretty people. Like, it was almost offensive how stupid they were. And then as I watched the show, I'm like, no. Like, it's not really a question of that. It's more like book smart versus street smart. Because these people understand how to work hard and succeed. And then, if you had ever told me that Molly Ephraim was in the third episode, I would have kept going. Instead, you rightly, I will give you all credit in the world for this, hung your hat on that Ming-Na Wen eventually shows up in an episode.
Yeah.
But that's too late for me to try to get invested in the show.
No, are you talking about the one with the dinner party where she tries to pretend?
She tries to pretend that she's has a book deal and everything that. Yeah. And it's Molly Ephraim from the first 6 seasons of Last Man Standing, before she was replaced by another actress named Molly, because, I don't know, I guess Tim Allen gets confused.
Oh man, Tim Allen's a whole other fucking piece of work right now with everything going on with Lightyear, but yeah,
so
like the ways in which, I don't know. It's a shame that show's not going to get at least the second half of its first season, because, like, first of all, it ends on a cliffhanger, and
that's on a huge cliffhanger.
Yeah, and so, like, that really is a bummer. On top of that, like, it's a decent enough story that, like, I would watch another 8 episodes of it, 10 episodes of it, right? Like,
I'd watch another. I would go back to broadcast television, where pretty much we've agreed that seasons are 13 episodes now. I'd watch 3 more seasons of it. I would go all the way.
I would definitely watch more seasons of it. But in terms of the whole, like, this just isn't landing, because, like, Netflix has not had much success in the sitcom specific realm. I think The Ranch might be the closest. And if you watch that show, like, it gets weirdly not sitcom-y pretty often. Like, it like veers into some, like, weird, like, rural politics stuff and things like that pretty often for a show that, you know, Ashton Kutcher,
I don't know, that's kind of sitcom-y now. Sitcoms aren't really comedies. There's that whole talk now about there should be a category at the Emmys for comedy funny versus comedy serious.
I've been doing a lot of Modern Family lately, and there's really nothing that's, like, in that vein, right? But maybe that's more what it is. Maybe it's not just Netflix. Maybe it's just TV all around. Then is like it's been hard to land just a sitcom, just a goofy group of friends, and, you know, it's built into the show that they are all super affluent and things like that. So, like, they don't really ever have to worry about things like money and shit, and that kind of stuff is always really, you know, it's fun to watch to a point, and then at some point you realize you're watching a bunch of just, like, white people misbehave, right? Friends, specifically, is what I like, and you start to question that at some point. So, like, I understand why that formula is not around anymore, but it's interesting to see people keep trying, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it was such a staple of television for so long.
Yeah.
I don't know. And recently I've gone back to The Munsters, because it's on Peacock. the first 2 seasons, or I guess the original airing of the show, and they had like 38 episodes a season back in the 60s. And that show is like perfect. I'm like, it's really funny, and I understand why my father, when we watch comedies, often goes, why aren't comedies funny anymore? And it's like, wow, that's a powerful statement, Dad. And he's not wrong.
Because the true answer to that is that the only real way to do comedy and be funny to more and more people is at some point just punching up at things that we have no control over, and that just makes us sad now, right? Right.
Because on some level, I want to believe that you can't appreciate the sun if you don't see the darkness. But no, it's more than that. A lot of these shows, it's just like, wow, this is a depressing half hour of comedy.
Oh, don't worry, though. Rowan Atkinson's going to come in with his non-political comedy versus a B. And, sometimes there's assholes in all circles, Devin. And so in this circle, we have a B that's an asshole. So he's going to take swings at that.
I haven't watched it yet, but you're the second person who's referenced it.
Oh my God. Hey, you know what? So Netflix really early on in their whole originals stuff, when they started blowing up years ago, they did one with Matt Berry, I think is the comedian's name, called Pompidou.
It's not Matt Berry. It is Matt Duncan.
Matt Duncan? Yeah, okay. Yeah. From Little Britain and stuff.
From Little Britain and the new British Bake Off stuff.
Yeah. So he does one called Pompidou, right? And the whole concept of the show is it is a silent film style, like Mr. Bean-esque, like slapsticky comedy, right? And it was a bit of a success for them at the time. To be fair, like it was at a time when they were not oversaturating themselves with original content. It was somewhat different than what was available on like TV and stuff, right? But to that point, it is part of Netflix's DNA to take these kind of really weird approaches at like, well, this seems to work in other parts of the world. Why is this not working in America? Let's try it in America. And then you get things like Squid Game, right? I mean, like that's exactly the decision making going on behind them opening their doors to so much of the Indian market too. It's why there's a lot of that stuff available on there. But give me a good Korean drama. Like I think My Lawyer is a Vampire, I think was the one that I had started a few years ago, and there were so many episodes of that show that just were like mind-blowingly like too wild to like comprehend. I couldn't follow what was going on.
I throw a lot of hate at John Oliver, but I do thank him for bringing the Subway North Korean soap opera into my life.
Oh, no. What? You mean like Subway sandwiches?
Subway sandwiches, yeah.
Oh, man.
Like it's just a commercial for Subway sandwich shop, and it is fantastic. Take the time to watch.
So so Netflix going out of their way to bring Rowan Atkinson, award-winning comedian, come in and do his thing. He walks to the door and he's like, "I'm going to fight a bee," and they're just like, "Sure, why not? Here's a bunch of money. We cancel a whole bunch of shit for you so that you can make this instead."
We were kind of hoping you might be the angel from Love Actually and make people fall in love. I will be fighting a bee. The bee will not be voiced by Jerry Seinfeld, before you ask.
And I will be naked in more of it than you are comfortable to want to see me in.
How much is that for you? What is your Mr. Bean naked comfortability level?
Well, are we talking about like back in the day, Mr. Bean? Because like I think there wasn't enough nudity on that show.
Oh, when he was an alien? I don't believe that Mr. Bean has the same anatomy as us.
Yeah, didn't they establish at some point? Was that on the cartoon show or something? There was some weird.
Oh, he's definitely an alien. Even in the original live action stuff, it starts with him coming down from a spaceship.
It is, okay. Yeah, it is like canon.
Like you don't see the spaceship, but like you hear spaceship noises off screen, and then you see the white light, and then there are some people who think that white light represents the fact that he is an angel from like heaven coming down and trying to live in the modern world, so that maybe God and all them can understand the modern problems of humanity to finally answer our prayers. But no, and they've gone on record, and then they even made it the fact that in the animated series, which is supposedly the canonical follow-up to the live action stuff, that he is an alien from space.
First of all, I love how this never really becomes like part of the story, like at any point. Like it's just, yep, he's an alien, and now watch this. But I also, there are some people out there that could argue those are the same story, Devin. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no. So Rowan Atkinson's doing this thing. I don't know why anybody thought it was a good idea to ask him to make a statement on like the state of like comedy and whether or not PC culture got out of hand. But we now have that on the record, which is a great thing to live by.
I thought
don't
you
know,
were going to say, no one asked him why he thought he was a good idea to do a show where you're fighting a bee. And I was going to finally come clean about my work in erasing the movie Mouse Hunt from the collective consciousness of our society.
You didn't erase shit. I just bought that movie for my parents for Christmas this year. I remember that movie.
I thought maybe you'd play along. I thought maybe we could do a fun Mandela effect thing.
Well, everybody forgets that that Sinbad was in Shazam, but
that never happened. Good times, great oldies.
But yeah, I don't know. I have not delved too deeply into the Man versus Bee hole. I have watched the first episode just because I needed to know like
did you
how.
Just say Man versus Bee hole.
Yeah, I did. And I was gonna keep going. Thanks for stopping and staring at that one.
We almost missed that one.
Oh, man.
Diarrhea.
But yeah, no, I just checked out the first episode. Honestly, I think I watched it on YouTube while I was at work, just to kind of get a feel because I wanted to know how Mr. Beanie it was gonna be, right? Like, is he doing more like his Black Adder stuff, which would be really weird because like what kind of weird statements about the world today is he going to make? Especially in a house with a bee, and so I thought it was going to be more slapsticky, and it is. The wilder thing to me is how much of that show does not revolve around him versus the bee. Like a lot of it does, but man, he just does things sometimes that have nothing to do with the bee, like breaks shit and like ruins shit and like fucks his life up. It's not like Mr. Bean where like it's very cartoonish. One goal, he's like, oh, this is the episode where he takes a test. Now let's see all the funny shit about him, like going to a school to take a test, right? Like that's it. That's the story, right? There's like they try to apply some like depth to this character in a way that basically means that seeing him outside in the world, it gets really disturbing. I imagine this is kind of the way that a lot of people feel about Bean the movie with what's his nuts there from Ghostbusters.
First of all, I've never seen Bean the movie, 1996. Are you talking about Janusz from Ghostbusters 2?
Yeah.
Peter McNichol?
Peter McNichol.
Woo!
Peter McNichol, thank you. Peter McNichol plays the head of this, the patriarch of this family that takes in Bean as he's staying over here in the States, and hilarity ensues as they don't get along. You've never seen Bean the movie? Oh my god! I feel like we might have to do that. We might have to do that for the show.
Yeah, we might have to do that and Mr. Bean's Holiday. Like, I'm so upset that in all of our look backs, we didn't decide to talk about Mr. Bean's Holiday because it's the 15th anniversary of Mr. Bean's Holiday, and that movie I fucking love. I would stop recording right now to go watch that movie.
That's the one with like Willem Dafoe and like,
with Willem Dafoe, and Mr. Bean essentially kidnaps a kid, but he doesn't really kidnap a kid. But everybody thinks he kidnapped the kid, even though he's trying to help the kid.
Yeah, oh man, the Bean stories are always really weird, but they rest on the fact that like you have this very solemn character. He is a little bit of a dick. If you go back and watch him now, you realize what a dick he kind of is. But like he's not outwardly spouting malicious shit.
True.
Where is it, Man versus Bee? This guy is just fucking awful. So like, I don't know. It's not fun to watch him fuck stuff up. It's just cringy. And like, I don't know. Maybe it works for some people. It's only been out for a few weeks now. But if more than one person has recommended it to you, Tev, then maybe that means it's going places.
I don't know. I think people just love Rowan Atkinson, if I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. Like I said, not too happy with some weird desire of his to say some weird shit about how comedy always needs a victim. I don't know exactly what that means. But,
I mean, it feels like if I wanted to be like an asshole and put on my intellectual hat and voice, that sounds like he's basically basing that off of Commedia dell'arte and the whole Punch and Judy of it all. And the fact that that's the type of comedy, and it seems to be the type of comedy that he ascribes to, especially like just quick mind flash through what I know Rowan Atkinson in. Think of him in The Witches, there are nothing but victims in the comedy that he is a part of in that movie. Even something like Love Actually, where he's supposed to be this angel of love that is bringing people together, but they cut out the one scene where he actually has wings. Like, he victimizes almost everybody that he interacts with. So it really stems from the fact that, like, that's just his play on comedy. That's his take on comedy. And what you're forgetting is that Commedia dell'arte had an entire cadre of character types and specific types of comedy. And what he has decided to settle on is the Punch and Judy of it all.
Sure, but when he then follows up that statement with, and sometimes those victims are going to be beneath you, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve it. It's just like, what?
Okay, that's a step beyond. I didn't know the quote. I didn't know the full quote. I was just playing off of the fact that, like, I could totally understand how somebody who is a scholar of comedy can walk away from thinking that, like, oh, comedy always has a victim. And really it's like, well, comedy always has a straight man. And I'm not, like, in the heterosexual sense, but it has the person who the joke is being played on. But right. To then, like, elevate that to the term victim, that's a little fucked.
Well, no, yeah, it's just, it was like it was a really weird, and what's even weirder about this whole interview that happened like a week before Man vs. Bee comes out, then this is what Rowan Atkinson chooses to talk about. But to his credit, he was really kind of like led into this corner by this person that was interviewing him. Like, I think it was for Salon or something like that, like, or Variety, like one of those types of larger magazines. And they just, a lot of leading questions, kind of really trying to get him to talk about this sort of stuff. Because, you know, the other big thing he is known for is Blackadder, and that was pure political comedy back in the day, yes. Right? And it taking on everything from religion to fascism to, you know, all that sort of stuff. So, like, using that to then try and be like, you know, how do you feel about the way that comedy works today? And it was just like, the man is here to sell a family comedy about him just like wrecking shit in a house. Like there's no reason why he needs to put out this dangerous statement, but this person clearly wanted it from him, right? So, you know, it sucks that he is not good enough to answer those questions poetically or handle that matter in a meaningful way, but also, like, fuck that interviewer for also, like, trying to pull that out of like that's such clickbaity bullshit. Like, oh, this is awesome, I'm gonna go interview the Man versus Bee guy, and I'm gonna pull a hot quote out of him so everybody clicks on my article online. Like, fuck off.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't see that one. I saw the trailer for Man vs. Bee, and that was pretty much where I'm like, this is not going to be my style of a show.
You know, if I was a kid, I probably would love it. You know, it falls into that category of, if you're not really paying attention to what's going on and you're just there for, like, the knocking statues over or, like, crashing cars off of the sides of mountains and shit, like, you know, it's like fun. It's funny to watch. Oh, the silly man, like, he tried to kill that bee, but then he accidentally crashed the chandelier. Is like, you know, that's the shtick for 10 episodes.
Yeah, I get nervous in an episode where I know things are going to go bad at the end of the episode. When I know that, like, oh, everything's working out, but, like, they can't work out because nothing works out for these characters.
Right.
And it's like, so something's going to break and something's going to get hurt, and, like, it gives me anxiety for them as to how things are going to happen. Is it going to be fate, or is it going to be the actions of one of them? Is it man versus man, man versus self, man versus nature? And that, like, anxiety as to what will happen. And I'm talking in, like, 22 minutes of entertainment. Like, that's too much for me.
No, I remember when Harry met Lloyd, you were sweating bullets the whole time because you just didn't know how they were going to resolve it.
How are they going to have to be friends at the end, Sejan? They're best friends at the beginning of Dumb and Dumber. How? I don't remember. I blacked out.
I'll be honest, I think I blacked out a lot of that movie too.
All right, so big news in speedrunning. I'd like to talk about this because the world of Super Mario Bros. 3 speedrunning has been broken wide open.
Whoa, hey,
in, like, the craziest way possible.
Is this like breaking news? Like, what's going on?
Like, this is breaking news. This is something that really just, like, they discovered it Thursday night. So, what's that, the 14th? And then on the 15th, extensive testing was happening. There's a video up. Mitch Flowerpower did a video of it, and then 100th Coin is sort of the person who realized that this was something that was taking place within the game. How much do you know about Super Mario Brothers 3? Is what I
mean,
need to ask you.
quite a bit.
Okay.
I have done playthroughs of that game where I purposely don't go for flutes because I realized when I was a kid I had skipped like 2 or 3 worlds, like pretty much never seen them.
Mhm.
So like I've now done 2 or 3 runs where I don't allow myself to do flutes and things like that.
Awesome. Do you know the difference between? Well, first of all, if I tell you left bros or right bros, do you know what that means?
I mean, is it your Hammer Bros and the ways in which they move?
No.
What does it mean?
So what it is if you at home, right, CJ, I don't know if you do, if you have a copy of Super Mario Brothers 3, go look at it. Go look at it right now, and the label on the front of it, the words Super Mario Brothers 3. A left bros copy will have the bros in line, alignment wise with the S and the M. So it'll be Super Mario Bros. All on the left side of the label, and then the number 3. A right bros copy has Super and Mario in line with each other, but then bros is closer to the 3. It's on the right side of the title.
So were these printed at different times? Were these printed in different regions? What's the...
So the reason for this is there is a running change to the ROM of Super Mario Brothers 3. Patching, we've talked about this before, patching is not new to modern gaming. It did happen sometimes with older games. The difference was those systems were not constantly connected to the internet. So in order to pump out an update to a game, they literally needed to create a new ROM and then flash that to the new carts and then print and produce those and ship them out.
So yeah, so they had to reissue, right?
Yeah.
Like so you would get different versions and you'd get issues and things like that, which is what makes a lot of the game collecting stuff so cool. And you know, as an archivist, like we've talked about this before, like a lot of what I love about these types of communities is the ways in which they're kind of preserving history with video games. This is a really cool thing that I was not aware of, and I hope that, like, you know, it continues on, because like the idea that there were 2 printings of Super Mario Brothers 3 is totally brand new information. Yeah. So what kind of differences are we looking at?
So the big difference is there's some like grammatical errors in the first one. Left Bros is the first one that came out. Okay. But then the first one, the easiest way to check if you don't look at the label, right? If the label is missing, but you have just a card of Super Mario Brothers 3, is to roll the credits, because one of the versions, and I think it's the Wright Brothers version, and do not quote me on that, actually gives titles to all of the different worlds. So like it's the first world is desert land. I mean, the first world is grassland, but then the second one is just the desert. 3 is the ocean, giant island for 4, the sky for 5, iced land for level 6, pipe maze for 7, and then dark world for 8. Like those are the newer ones. Where the original printing, it was just grassland, desert land, waterland, giant land, Skyland, Iceland.
Because I remember Giant Lands, right?
Yeah.
Like when I think of that, I don't think of it as Giant Island. Although now that you say that, I'm sure I've heard that how it's been referred to at some point in you know, in the past. But Giant Land is what I would always call it.
So I have to imagine that is the Wright Bros one, because the Wright Bros one is the one that has the grammatical changes, and yeah, it has to be that, because that's the ROM that they then went and built Super Mario All-Stars off of, and that's the first time I saw that like all of these lands had actual titles. Yeah, when I beat that game. So like those are the big ones, those are the big things. And for a long time in the Super Mario Brothers 3 speedrunning community, it was never thought that there was any difference between running on a Left Bros or a Right Bros copy of the game. By all accounts, it did not have any bearing on like lag or loading or anything like that, right? The changes were inconsequential to the game. Yeah. And what has been revealed as of like just past Thursday is that is not the case. That the Left Bros version of the game is the faster version of the game. And it is for like the most inconsequential reasoning ever. Oh. So what it is I don't know the last time you played Super Mario Bros. 3, but you have the score bar on the bottom, right? Right. Where your score is. And generally your score, it's like in the first world, you're going to get that up to like 5 digits. Yeah. But the memory of the game can only store that in like a 10-digit number, right? That's how it stores it, and then it has to, go through, check it, and realize how it's supposed to build the 5 score. Every single time that there's a screen transition, when it reloads in that bottom bar, it needs that calculation happens in the ROM of the game.
Okay.
So the way that they do that is your score, the numbers in your score are added together. So if you've got like 63, 250 points, that right there is 16 is the number that's stored in the flash memory of the ROM. And then looking at 16, it's able to determine that the next time it loads the game, the score should read out 69250.
Right.
So what they found out is that the thresholds for that lag frame in reloading after a transition is higher in the Left Brothers version of the game.
The later released one?
No, the later released one has a smaller threshold.
So it doesn't take as long.
So no, it takes longer. It would take longer to do it because
Wild.
It's like one of those things that you would never notice, but somebody did all the calculations to how the score is saved in flash memory, and then they realized that like the threshold in the Wright Brothers version, so the newer version of the game, Program 01, is 24 for all of the levels in the second world, the desert level.
Okay.
So it's 24 in that game. So if your score numbers add up to a number higher than 24, then every transition in the game, there's an extra frame of data loading wise. Now that doesn't mean anything. Games on the Nintendo have run at 60 frames per second, right? So like just one additional frame, you think that that's going to be inconsequential, but this is a game that's been run and that has been scienced out so like accurately that the differences between like times is almost down to the frame. So if you're able to save yourself a frame every single transition in the desert world, you save a quarter of a second. And then think about that quarter of a second going through all of the worlds of Super Mario Brothers 3. And that's just it. Because the threshold for the loading in the Left Brothers version of the game, the original Program 0 version of that ROM, is 29. Now, 29 is pretty difficult after the first world of that game to have a score that adds up to higher than 29. Right. But 24, like, you need to be playing, like, looking at your score and make sure that you're not picking up random coins, and the way that you're ending it. It's just like, it's kind of blown the whole thing up using the math of it.
Okay, so then there's like a whole like ripple effect, because in addition to the frame stuff, you then also have new paths that you can consider, because if you were using certain pathways before to make sure that you weren't collecting shit that you no longer have to worry about, you suddenly have like areas where you can cut off seconds by the end of your play. I could see you saving about 4 seconds, but like just by learning about this, and then God knows once you start like practicing.
When you start practicing and making sure that your routing avoids things, that you're not breaking like blocks during, like, one of the big things to do is, like, after you beat the Hammer Brother, there's so much load time before the level ends. And like, if there are blocks there, sometimes people will just jump up and break them, but like, that's an extra 100 points every time. So if you break 6 blocks, and then that 6 plus everything else you have in there pushes you over the frame the lag frame limit, you're gaining an extra quarter second for every single transition. And I mean every single transition, every time you go through a door, every time you go through a pipe, every time you load a level. So, like, they add up.
Yeah.
So, like, now there's a run on these Left Brother copies of the game. Then, like, I don't advocate that if you have games and you want to sell games to, like, sell them now. But right now, it's a hot commodity to make sure that you have a Left Brothers copy of the game if you're a speedrunner. And other people are making sure that they can, like, stockpile them in case their games go bad. And it's also, like, this really wild thing when you think about, like, how impermanent that, like, those games are, right? Because right now, if you load up your Nintendo Switch and you have Nintendo Switch Online, the only version of Super Mario Brothers 3 that you can play is the Wright Brothers version of the game. So you're automatically, in addition to everything else that's going on, because that game is not loaded locally on your system, it's all like loaded via the internet and servers and shit. Like you got to make sure that you stay below 24 going into the desert. This is so new that the other limits are not known yet. Like that is what the testing is happening right now. Like the game is now being scienced out on like a mathematical level to make sure that you are avoiding that, because like the pipe maze level, where every single level has you going through multiple pipes, like there's like there's seconds to be saved in that just by mitigating what your lag frame limit is.
Wow. Yeah, and like to what you were saying about the digital stuff and the fact that the only version available is going to be this now kind of the not preferred version of this game by speedrunners, right? And the thing is like, is that going to encourage Nintendo to ever put out the other one in any fashion? No, of course not, right?
Right.
So like, how far out are we from that being the only version that's left, because that's the version that Nintendo saved, essentially. Right? And that's like, and then that's only for as long as they cared to, as we're learning currently with like Ubisoft, like pulling the plug on a bunch of Assassin's Creed games and things like that. Like, when is that happening? It's happening relatively
September,
soon.
I believe, is when that goes live.
By the end of this year, though, we're going to be staring down the barrel of like people who have spent $60, $70, $80 worth of content that they spent money on just suddenly just not being available to them. And it's not like, oh, we've updated like I've gotten 2 more systems since then, right? This was something I had on PlayStation, and now I have a PlayStation 5. Why can't I put this disc in? Like, it's not that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, last year when you had a sale, Ubisoft, and you sold a bunch of these Assassin's Creed games that everybody bought, and then like a year and a half later, you're like, just kidding, can't play them anymore. That seems like a really weird move, right?
Yeah. It is for preservation and all that, and because those games are impermanent, right? That's why people are stockpiling Left Bros, because eventually they're going to fail. And then I was also just reminded, Mark, listener of the show, hey Mark, shout out, he has just started to want to become like more serious about his speedrunning, like actually put up some scores on the leaderboards that exist on speedrun.com. And one of his favorite games, a game that he like did speedruns of casually, was Friday the 13th on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And that game, like the rules of that game, require you to be playing on regular Nintendo hardware. You cannot use a clone console or anything like that. It has to be a regular Nintendo, and it is preferred that you use an actual cart of Friday the 13th, as opposed to one of the flash cart options that are out there. Like, that's the community is saying, if you don't run the game this way, we will not consider your runs valid.
Interesting.
So
is
then,
there like obvious reasoning behind it, or is it a bunch of math?
It has to do with like RNG values, and like you can program it so like you know where Jason is in ROMs and things like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's like every time you power on the actual system, it's based on voltage, how the RNG is populated for the game. So it's to make sure everybody's playing on a level playing field. Yeah. So then, like, that question is, right, because we're such in the early days of everything that's happening with Super Mario Brothers 3, will the rules be changed to reflect you have to run on a Left Brothers cart of the game? Will it split the leaderboard to Left Bros, Right Bros? And then probably the Speedrun edition will be considered more seriously as well. Because there's a Speedrunner edition of Super Mario Brothers 3 that eliminates all the auto-scrolling levels and make sure that transitions are as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. And, like, that right now is not considered because, you know, there's no way to get, like, a hardware copy of that. Like, it's a ROM, you do it on an emulator or you load it onto a flash cart. So, like, lack of availability has been, you know, something that's been standing in the way of that speedrun edition having any sort of validity in the speedrunning community of Super Mario Brothers 3.
Right.
But, like, now that they know, like, there's an actual difference between Left and Right Bros carts, who knows what it's going to mean for the community and the rules. Because one of the craziest things that I have experienced in my, and make no mistake, it is a brief dip of a toe into speedrunning that Devin Decker, have actually done. I am not as committed to other people that you might see out there on the internet. There are a couple of games I like that I learned how to beat sort of fast. But even in that brief time that I have seen it, the rules about what makes a run valid, about what makes a speed run correct, has been the thing that has blown my mind most of all.
Yeah.
And then also people who like don't understand them. Because I remember, this goes back early, I might have already mentioned it on the show, but it was like 5-6 years ago when I was getting into Link to the Past speedrunning, and I was watching a stream and somebody said, why is the input displayed for Link to the Past speedruns? And I answered in the chat, well, current rules require you to have an input display to make sure that everything is on the level. And the runner's like, that's patently not true. And I'm just like, who are you? I just read the rules.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to get into this, and it is one of those situations where, is randomizer going to require that same rule set of you have to have input display? Because then, like, am I going to bother to try to play these randomizers on actual hardware when I can't show my inputs on regular hardware?
Right.
Like, I don't know. It's just been a crazy thing, and being there, watching this happen in real time has been pretty insane.
I mean, this seems like a pretty innocuous isn't the right word because it's clearly going to have a lot of the changes, but it seems like it's a pretty fair and like it's not a malicious like discovery in any way, right? Like there aren't people out there that are like upset about this, are they?
No, and in fact, it's everything that I've seen related to it. It's excitement. It's excitement in a way that like we understand the game better. And that is what I love most of all. That is the reason why I'm talking about it on the Say Report, is that the approach to the fact that the game has sort of been broken open in a new way has not been met with ire or anger. It's been met with, we need to understand this better. Because that's like what you want to see happen. That's how you want to see progress work.
Yeah.
Rather than be afraid of it.
If this was a modern game, then you bet in 2 weeks the developers would have a patch out to make both versions the same, right?
Exactly, yeah. And they would probably try to... Well, first of all, that original version would be a legacy version of the game.
Right,
and what it would need to be... And right there'd be that break. Because something like Cuphead has the legacy speedruns as related to the fact that the first version of the game had the quick weapon swap. Right. So, like, most people want to run the game on that version of it because it's faster. It's a faster speed run that way.
Right.
Where, going forward with that repaired and with, like, fixed hitboxes, it's a different game. So it's not that they would have it out to fix it and make them both the same. It is the fact that the only version that would be made available legitimately from Nintendo would be the patched version, would be the version where all of your lag frames are lower thresholds before you're getting an extra quarter of a second of loading every transition. And it's just
wild.
It's wild. It's just been this wild thing that I don't know who to like share it with because it's so math related.
Yeah.
Like
And I mean, said, like, but it's the crazy kind of stuff like that, though, where like the ways in which that's always what's going on in the background in gaming, right? And so people get really kind of cranky and upset when people like dig this deep in. We talk about how with the speedrunning community, there are people out there that are like, why are you doing this? You're ruining my favorite game by playing it this way, and they just don't understand that like this is what goes on in the background to make the game like fun and playable, right? Like figuring this stuff out. It's what you hope patching and reissues and new versions and re-releases and remakes. It's the kind of thing that you want them to embrace. Is there was some stuff going on in the background with this. We altered it in this way because we needed to make sure that everybody had a fair chance across the board. Also, shit was spelled wrong. Things were colored differently than they should be. Like we just wanted to fix some minor stuff here or there, and like that stuff we could only learn about that stuff, how to do that stuff, to look for that stuff when people break these games like this, right? Like it's a cyclical thing. Like people need to be able to enjoy the games in this way in order for game designers, developers, and creators to figure out what to do next. Because this information is also really, really wild in that, like, how does this affect things going forward in terms of, like, Super Mario Brothers 3 clones that people get really into? And then from that, some kid is going to play those games in the speedrunning community, fall in love with gaming, and then he's going to end up creating a game 10 years from now that we all fall in love with again, right?
Yeah. It's interesting to see how it feeds itself, how the community builds itself up.
Right.
And it's just so electric to be part of it, because there's so little progress in our world these days, right? We're not living in the time where, like, the car is brand new or anything like that. Like, we talked about the iPod or the iPad earlier in this episode. That was sort of one of the last big innovations that we've seen in the tech space.
Yeah, I mean, VR has been a big thing over the last few years, and that has led to a lot more of an understanding of what VR can do or should do, as opposed to the idea that VR can do anything, like focusing on like maybe we need it for simple things like doctor's visits and things like that. Like there's smaller innovations here or there. I mean, on a much smaller scale, let's talk about everything that you and I have experienced with Stadia and the idea of streaming gaming and how now that's become such a normal thing. And I bet you more than one or two of those web services that they use is based on Google and Google's Stadia like web service that they probably created for that. So like Stadia itself may not last much longer, but what Stadia discovered and what Stadia learned and developed is going to be something that's going to be a part of gaming going forward.
Right. It'll be part of the history of gaming.
Yeah, it's not maybe as mind-blowing as like putting an iPad in front of a kid and saying like welcome to the world, but at the same time it is going to fundamentally alter the ways in which we play games going forward.
I mean, even a Stadia, it's not the same architecture, it's not the same patents that are being used. The fact that it existed inspired people to try to do it on their own. And
pushed competitors to make theirs better.
Yeah, right? And that is what we're truly seeing, right? Xbox Cloud Gaming is so much better than what you see from Google Stadia. It's almost disappointing to see that Google just didn't keep going with it.
Yeah, but they didn't have to, and I kid you not, like there's only two big web services in the world, really: Amazon Web Services and Google Web Services. I'm sure that there's other companies and things out there, but like the amount of shit that is built on that stuff that is not Google or Amazon related, like it's not just like Google gets to use it themselves. They work with other companies to allow people to host their websites, host their streaming services and things like that. We'll never know how Netflix does its whole thing, but somewhere along the line, I bet you they pay one of those two companies some money for some server space and some help getting to people.
The AWS is like everywhere.
Right. Exactly, right. So, like, you say that it's not necessarily built on Stadia technology, and maybe that's not the case, but at some point they're probably paying money to Google just to be able to get into people's homes, right?
Yeah.
And, like, that whole system and the ways in which it works, we're not privy to, nor do I feel like I need to be. It's not like I feel like they're hiding secrets from us or something like that, but there is an entire, like, meta world out there that, I mean, there's a reason they chose the word Facebook.
That doesn't belong to Meta.
Right. But there's an entire, like metaverse out there of this information that is going around that is both scary and also wonderful, because it's changing the ways in which we get entertainment and get news and get in touch with each other and all of this. And gaming is just one thing that pushes things in that way, but it's really cool to see kind of like the spark and the start of something that is probably going to be hugely affecting like this community immediately, but I bet you eventually you start seeing some things out there that are affected by this.
Well, I mean, Super Mario Brothers 3 is sort of the standard. It's sort of the thing that kicks off speedrunning because of that 17-minute video clear. That was one of the first things on YouTube. Do you remember that? When that was like lighting up the world?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, someone beat the game in 17 minutes. And then like that was found out to be like a tool-assisted speedrun. The thing was not legitimate. And now there are people who can beat the game in that 17 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Time frame. And it's one of those things. So when something like this happens in the world of Super Mario Brothers 3, because there's this weird sort of spotlight on that actual game, I mean, it's gonna ripple through, right? Now that we know that something like a lag frame exists, other games and other communities are probably going to look to them and see if it has any bearing on what they're doing. And it's going to be exciting. It's an exciting time in speedrunning and in the world.
Individual games. Excellent, man.
Speaking of an exciting time in the world, I've tried to get you to take the bait a couple of times, but I think we need to talk about the Munsters, Sejin.
I tried to transition into it earlier, but we stumbled past it. Yeah, you mentioned that you'd watched Mockingbird Lane, and I have to imagine that that is because of the news with Rob Zombie's The Munsters.
It's because of the fact that we've been watching The Munsters on Peacock, and then, I'm like, it's not new, right? They tried to do it, and it didn't work. And it was Brian friggin' Fuller who they tried to have do the series. And I remember watching it live that Friday, and then it was like the height of my then going online to find files of whatever went over the air. So I have a copy of it, and it's like, you need to see it. It's crazy. It's crazy how they tried to modernize the Munsters. And it's not like it's the first time that the Munsters have tried to be modernized. From the 65 series, there was the color series in 82, and then in 96 they tried to do it. So then it made sense that they would try to do another TV series
Plus,
in the 2010s, and
2 or 3 made-for-TV movies, right?
Yes.
Like Munsters Go Hawaii or whatever nonsense they got into. But there's been the Munsters is one of those weird ones that pops up. It seems like every 6 or 7 years somebody takes a swing at it.
Right. And ironically, one of the reasons why is because that unity, that peace, that understanding and acceptance from Star Trek, the Munsters really explores the other side of that. While it's a Frankenstein and a vampire who have a werewolf as a kid, a lot of the exploration in that series is the way in which people of otherness are treated by society.
Yeah, I was talking about this the other day because we're big Addams Family fans in the house, and I think we've talked about it on the show, and Addams Family is a really easy thing to point to. And you look at something like The Munsters and you just think, I'll just watch the Addams Family. But there is a big difference between the two of them. The Addams Family is very much about a affluent family in an area and inviting people kind of into their home and like becoming part of their world. And a lot of the humor and the comedy and the stories are based on like, normies, as it were, showing up at the Addams house and then dealing with like, oh, the stairs open up and or like, Cousin It shows up too. It's always about bringing people to them in their world to show them, and they're fine, they're safe, they're protected on their own. The Munsters, on the other hand, is very, very much about them going out into the real world and and the ways in which the world is not kind to them, is not always kind to them, right? And then them dealing with that. So very, very different concepts, although they are kind of dealing with a lot of the same jokes and comedy because of the idea that they're, as you said, monsters, but in the world.
Yeah. I mean, they're Transylvanian American immigrants. Like, that's a big part of their story.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm excited. The Munsters is something that has been a part of my life pretty much my entire life. My mother was a fan, so then when it was on Nick at Night, she's like, you might want to watch this show.
Right, yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why.
That's how I got into it too. My mom and dad were just like, "Oh, you'll like this," and put this on one time, and they were right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm not upset that Rob Zombie is doing his version of the Munsters. What does upset me about it, and I want to make sure I say this as clearly as possible, and I don't mean anything by it. I don't understand the question, and it's the question that has consistently been asked. Are these people complaining about the fact that it's going to be a PG-rated film? Ratings, like I've talked about this before, ratings have no bearing on whether or not I'm going to see a movie anymore. Ever since I turned 17, and basically I can see any movie that I want to if I have the money.
I would argue, though, that a rating is a good thing in terms of letting you know what you're getting into, right? Like, it may not say, like, oh, you're guaranteed to see boobs in this movie, but if you go and see an R-rated film, if you saw boobs, you were not going to be as offended as if you were at, like, a G-rated film and it happened, right?
Yeah.
Like, it sets a context for what you're getting into, I would say.
I mean, I've made that concession before. For parents who have kids who are going to the movies, I'm sure ratings are invaluable. But as somebody who does not have a child in his life, right, and that, like, I don't have a kid that I'm taking to see movies or anything like that, I never even consider the rating of a film. So then when I see constant things online like, why is this rated PG-13? Why is this rated PG? Why is Rob Zombie doing a PG-rated movie? I would be excited for this movie if it wasn't rated PG. What is Rob Zombie thinking? Like, it really it hits in a strange way.
Yeah, so here's where I'm at on the whole thing. I am conceptually super on board for this film. Rob Zombie has made it no secret how much he loves the Munsters. Like, it has been something that has actually been a bit of a project, like a passion project, what you'd even call it for him. Like, he's happy to be doing this movie because he loves the content itself. And in that, he's really aiming for something that fits in with the old show and the old movie, at least from everything that he has said and for what we've seen so far. It seems like that's exactly what he's aiming for. You know, a lot of the same kind of silly like jokes, the three camera setup for like the sitcom effect in a lot of places, you know, the kind of humor that was there that was like, you know, the dad jokes, what I would say is a good category to put in a lot of the humor of the Munsters, you know. So with that in mind, no fucking shit it's gonna be a PG movie. What did you think he was gonna do? Like, have Michael Myers show up and be like, oh, Uncle Mike's here, and he just shows up with a severed head? Like, what, like
Well, he did do Halloween, so I think he has access to the character. But I understand.
But that's my point, right? Or did they expect him to like tie it into like his fucking fire?
Are the Devil's Rejects going to show up?
Yeah,
no,
like,
probably not.
Right. So I'm very confused as to what people expect this project to be, and it solely seems to be that what you're pointing to is that it's Rob Zombie doing it, and if you've been paying enough attention to Rob Zombie that you're like excited about him doing another movie or a project, I would like to think that you also then would know enough about his love for this project and his love for the original show that that's obviously the direction he would go in. Like, that's where the disconnect is weird for me, is like these people that are writing these articles and complaining in these forums and shit about this, you know, you start to wonder, like, are they quote unquote true fans, which is a bullshit way to think about it.
But like, gross, but yeah.
But like that's exact. But like their whole attitude of just being like, "Oh, this is supposed to be a Rob Zombie movie. I would like this isn't what I want from him." It's just like, dude, like, I guess that's really more what it is. Is whenever somebody says to me like, "I just didn't expect it from this artist," and that's like a criticism of some kind, that feels really weird to me because like, well, they're human and they have multiple sides and that they want to express, and as artists, they're allowed to and / want to and have the ability to like to express all of those feelings and thoughts. Like it's like the dude is just a dude at the end of the day. Like, as much as he is like put on this persona for music, like that's not his whole existence or being.
Right. But you mentioned something and I wanted to explore it before I put my finger on the scale. That it's almost scarily or like trying to pay homage or recreate what it was. Can you elaborate on that for me?
So so this is where we start to talk about quality, right?
Yeah.
Because this is where I think it's actually going to be a hindrance for a lot of people, including possibly myself. He's even like, if you look at the amount of shit on set when you watch the old Munsters show, like that is the level of detail that he's going for when he recreates stuff. It is trying so hard to be such a faithful recreation of that show and the ways in which that show was produced in order to be the show that it was, because it did also have a lot of really cool effects, you know, just like the Addams Family, but like in like the cool stuff that would happen, the you know, the moving pieces of the house, the bubbling cauldrons everywhere, like all of that sort of stuff at the time was really wild and cool to see. But we've gotten so much better at filmmaking and set dressing and costume designing and acting and a lot of other things, and it's so clear that he wants to do such a faithful recreation to the original product that I think some of that stuff appears to be suffering. So that would be the best way in which I would explain kind of some of that. The stuff that I feel like is a faithful kind of recreation connection to that original show is also like time period and stuff too, right? Because it doesn't seem like it's modern time. It feels like it's kind of timeless, maybe would be the better way to put it.
Yeah, timeless seems the thing, because 1313 Mockingbird Lane, where they rent based on the show, I was really surprised to see that they don't own that house, considering they've been alive for at least 500 years.
Right.
Like,
hell of a lease, man.
That's a hell of a, right. Well, it's rent controlled, right?
Yeah, there it is.
But yeah, because Herman does this whole thing where he's like, well, I have to go out and make the rent every month. And it's like, how are you people renting this house? Is the landlord even alive? Do you just send your checks to some P.O. box that is overflowing with riches for you? Because the house is not maintained, right? I mean, I'm sure they love it, but yeah, it's this timeless sort of feel. And there's even sort of this thing where in that second episode of the show, the mailman goes from Mrs. Cribben's house next door, and it looks like a slice out of regular 60s ephemera suburbia. And then as he walks along the sidewalk to their home, the world darkens, like overgrowth comes out, and then suddenly it's this old Victorian style manor that they're living in. That only has 9 rooms in it, so I don't even know how big it is. Like, there's a tonal disconnect for me from the way that Lily refers to the house and the actual house that they live in, but that's neither here nor there. But it is one of these things where, like, they live in the creepy old house in the neighborhood. So it wouldn't be surprising if what we see, that timelessness of their home, is then Carl's fucking house in the middle of Up.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it'd be great if on the two sides of 1313 Mockingbird Lane are, like, 23-story condominium buildings.
Yeah. You know, and I know that the movie seems to be focusing heavily on the relationship between Herman and, why am I forgetting his wife's name right
Lily.
now? Lily.
Yeah.
Herman and Lily meeting and getting together, right? And Grandpa not approving of it. And that seems like a pretty, like, tropey, but not one that I've seen the Munsters do before, trope style story. So I'm
pretty happy about that. I have to be honest with you, because
it means that we don't get Eddie and we don't get the niece there either, right?
Yeah,
like,
we don't have Marilyn, which is a shame, because that's the funniest bit of it, is the fact that Marilyn thinks there's something wrong with her. It's totally that Twilight Zone where the woman's trying to get the surgery to look more ugly, right? Eye of the beholder. It's one of those things where,
they're
like,
all pig people. Yeah, that one.
She thinks that there's something wrong with her because of the way the outside world works for her, but then by how accepting her family is of her, and they're just like, well, you'll figure it out, kid, right? No one in my bloodline ever looked like that. Like, yeah, Herman's not always great either in the early episodes. But the fact that Grandpa Munster is against it makes me very happy, because the fact that we call him Grandpa Munster always made me feel that he built Herman, and that seems to be what they went for in 1313 Mockingbird Lane, the remake from the 2010s, and it's just like, well, that seems weird to me. That's like this grandfather built his granddaughter Lily a man. Like, it always made me uncomfortable to think that, like, technically they're related in some way if they're both Munsters.
Oh man, right, because he would have been Herman. Yeah, okay. Oh,
he would have been Herman Munster because he assumed the last name of his creator, much like Frankenstein's monster did when he started going by Frank. I can't. Strawberry Frank. Just stop me here. I don't have the joke here. I don't have the joke. What is the frickin' Strawberry Frankenstein's name from Count Chocula? Frankenberry.
Frankenberry. Yeah,
so that completely ruins the fucking joke. It was.
Where you were going. I was like, okay.
I like Fruit Brute cereal.
There it is.
That guy have a box of it in the studio. Yeah. So it's just one of those situations where, like, yeah, so his last name would be Munster because Grandpa Munster built him, but then he presents him to Lily, his granddaughter. And it's just like, isn't that technically like her uncle?
I've built you a husband, and I gave him the biggest penis I could find. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good thing that show was in black and white. It was in color eventually. I'm so sorry about that joke.
But also, like, the weird coloring scheme too, stuff,
yeah.
Right? Like, that gave me some weird vibes from the eventual color episodes later. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least they all match the colors. I do appreciate that. It's always been unsettling. The 80s series of the Munsters, even as a kid when I saw it, was unsettling to me to see Herman in that, like, neon lime green skin tone.
Oh yeah, like the neon blues and lime green are really weird.
But it's what they went with because it's what appeared on camera. And I don't know if it was possibly the colors that were on screen when they were shooting in black and white,
Right.
because of the fact that one of the reason why the ruby slippers, right? Because they wanted it to be striking, but also if they were in black and white, you could still kind of tell that they were ruby, where the silver slippers, which they are in the book and the stage production, they just looked like shoes.
Right. Yeah. So when you're filming in black and white, I think we've talked about this before with like Good Night and Good Luck, right?
Yeah.
Where like they basically have to do like candy colors, like everything is like bright pinks and reds and blues and greens and yellows, so that when it goes to the monochrome like black and white style, like you end up with some actual decent shades of gray as opposed,
Yeah.
So I could definitely, I never really thought about that, but when they did the 80s version, they probably just put the same makeup on they always had, not thinking that it would be really weird.
And didn't realize that, like, oh my God, it's so bright. Yeah, but it's the 80s. Maybe it's going to inspire a whole aesthetic for the generation. And that's where we got Dayglow from. The Munsters. Maybe. This is not a confirmed fact. This is a Devin Decker fact.
No, but we definitely got ankle sweats.
Do you mean leggings? I don't know.
Specifically the furry ones.
Yeah, those weird things. But yeah, like that. I think that's it. We definitely explored it in the fact that the vision in the black and white WandaVision episodes was bright blue,
right?
In order to appear that he was red in those times. So it's something that is out there and that exists. I don't know. I'm excited for it. But what I have to say, this is me putting my finger on the scale to see if I can get what I wanted. If we can, dig through the ditches and burn through the witches, Siegen.
Oh,
I guess not. Siegen didn't say the secret word, so he didn't get to win $100 today.
No.
Because the secret word, as I said at the beginning of the episode, before Siegen was even here, is Dragula. And anybody who is questioning why Rob Zombie is doing a Monsters movie doesn't understand that Dragula, his very popular song that appears in The Matrix and, is one of those iconic Rob Zombie songs, at least for me. I can't. Do you think that's true? Do you agree with that? Do you co-sign that feeling?
I mean, it's definitely one that if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I could name like 3 movies that I've seen this in. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That song, the title of that song, is a reference to Grandpa Munster's drag race car from episode 37 of the first season.
Nice.
So, Hot Rod Herman. It might be 36. It's in the 30s, though, where he drives the Dragula. And that's hilarious. And then in the video...
In what way did you think you were going to hook me into going down that line with you? I didn't know what the hell you were getting at.
Because the chorus of Dragula is, dig through the ditches and burn through the witches, get in the back of my Dragula.
Yeah, there you go, everybody that didn't know what song we were talking about. You now probably pretty much instantly know.
Yeah. But also, if you watch the video, in the video of Dragula, he has recreated Herman's souped up coupe from that episode of the series. So, Rob Zombie loves the Munsters.
Yeah.
To the fact that, so these people, the one comment that I keep seeing on YouTube and on Facebook shares and on Twitter is, well, Sherry Moon Zombie wanted him to make a movie, so he's doing it for his wife. And it's like, no, Rob Zombie is doing this for him. He loves the Munsters. And as somebody...
Also, who would think that, considering what she has done? Why would this be? That's such a weird read on Sherry Moon as well.
I know.
Sorry.
It's insane. Everything related to this movie is insane. And I'm just sitting there like, I can't wait for September. Is this actually a theatrical movie? Because we live in a world of streaming services. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, based on the quality, we talked about this, it was just going to a streaming service. Oh no, this is a theatrical release? Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
Please sign me up. Because I'm excited. I like the Munsters. But yeah, the reads on it are so crazy. And he clearly likes the Munsters. And Mockingbird Lane, right? The weird, edgy remake with Eddie Izzard and Jerry O'Connell. It would make sense where he would try to restore some of the wholesomeness of the series.
Yeah.
And the timeline really works too, because Herman's whole speech from the 7th episode of the series, where Eddie is called a bad name, and he talks about, like, we should judge people by their heart, the size of their hearts and their character. Like, that went wicked viral again in 2020. So, of course, like, the way that Hollywood works, it would be about 2 years before we see something trying to capitalize on that in the big screen.
Right. Yeah.
Like, everything about it makes sense to me, and I, for one, am here for it. And I hope that, I think you're here for it too, Siege, right?
I am not going to stand by any, like, word on quality. I love Rob Zombie as a film creator. I mean, as just an artist in general, but as a film creator, I adore him, and I do know that he has had some challenging films, but I have loved them all. I mean, my brother was, like, laughing the other day because he apparently never finished 31. Which is the wild, like Trapped in a Maze with Killer Clowns movie that he did recently. It is a weaker one of his films for sure. Right. And so he's just like, I'm so torn because I do really love Rob Zombie and I do really want to see this, but I feel like those last few films have really been struggling for me. And, like, I'll give him a chance any day of the week is where I'm at on that. I'm like, just give it another go. Like, yeah, a couple of these last ones have been weird, I guess, if you feel that way. I liked 31. My favorite one of his least kind of, like, loved films, my favorite one is the one all about the record that I think Jeremy Zombie plays the DJ in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like it's not Witches of Eastwick. What's the name of that one? Lords of Salem. And the novelization that he put out of it and stuff like that, like, really just, like, I fell in love with that story.
That reminds me, I need to order the novelization of that unproduced episode of the Orville. I think it just dropped this past week. Yeah. I love a novelization of stuff. I have the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novelization that I just started. Once A Million Ways to Die in the West is fantastic. So I mean, I will add. Was it? It's not Salem's Lot. What's the name of it? Lords of Salem.
Lords of Salem.
To that. I love a good novelization of a script, especially when the person who's writing the novelization is the person who was involved in the script.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what makes the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood one so great. It's Tarantino, just getting to see Tarantino kind of just at my own pace unleashed. Like, getting to see him unleashed is pretty cool.
And that's also A Million Ways to Die in the West. Seth MacFarlane just wanted to write a novel to see if he could do it. And then the way that he paid for writing that novel was to agree to make it a movie. And if you didn't like the movie, I actually think you might like the novel, because it's paced like a novel.
Yeah, I feel like that needs to be, like, up on a shelf with, like, my Caddyshack novelization. I do believe that somewhere in my parents' house is an old novelization of Animal House, the collected stuff, because I'm pretty sure that showed up in National Lampoon magazine in like bits and pieces, and eventually there was a collected version for Animal House, the novelization that they then turned into the movie. And it was just, when I was a kid, I loved, like, that thing. Like, I carried it with me everywhere.
Yeah, because I mean, that movie is just a bunch of vignettes from the National Lampoon,
right?
All put into quote unquote the Animal House. So that's not surprising that they would do a collected printing of all those stories.
Yeah, man, Caddyshack.
But yeah, I mean, like, and for me, I don't usually get involved in who the director is on something. So I've seen Rob Zombie stuff and probably not known it was Rob Zombie until after the fact.
Yeah, that's also the big thing. But yeah, so I know that his quality, like, is questionable for some people out there already, and so, like, it's in a weird place because of that, because I'm just like, Rob Zombie's doing a movie and everybody's just like, oh, I don't know. It's just like, no, I promise this one's gonna be even weirder than the last one. That's a worse thing.
That doesn't make me excited to see it.
Make me more excited.
I don't know. I'm excited for it, and that's where I'm standing on it. As we live in this weird world where everybody seems to have an opinion on it, and then, like, my response is, I'm gonna go back and revisit, and then watching Mockingbird Lane again. Oh yeah, I get why you'd try to be beholden to the source material, Mr. Zombie. Can I call you Mr. Zombie, or is that your father? Man, I hate myself.
It's also reportedly got a $40 million budget. Is that correct?
I think 33 is what I saw. So 40 million seems like the roundup on that. Plus, Cassandra Peterson's in it, right? Like, she's playing the next door neighbor. She shows up at the end of the trailer in the witch makeup. So it's exciting. Jesus, it's everything coming together in this really cool way that is either going to work or not work, and I'm excited to see what happens. Check back the Say Report in September when we can report on it.
Heck yeah.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add, Sejan?
I don't know if we've recorded since I started diving into the Portal replays that I've been doing. Oh yeah, we did. We
did. You ended the last episode with it, so I'm glad to go back to Aperture Sciences with you.
Yeah, and the fam and I have just started to dig into Portal 2, so we're deep into that. Much bigger game than the first one now, especially because I don't know how, but I got my replay of the first one down to 2 hours, and so going into Portal 2, that even if you know what you're doing, can still be a 14-15 hour game. It's just very big experience. It really what's really cool about having the two of them together is really how much it feels like that first one really is just kind of almost like a tutorial for Portal 2 really in the end. And so yeah, it's just been cool to just revisit that stuff and really excited about that. It's got me excited to go back and try some other recent re-releases like the Stanley Parable re-release that they did and things and those sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, other than that, we've had family town, so I've also been all over friggin' Utah for the last week, so I'm just kind of wiped.
I also have been all over creation. Last Sunday, I saw Love and Thunder again, and
Nice.
then we stayed out of the house until 4 p.m. just driving around, just seeing Rhode Island, because we haven't done that for a while. But
because gas is so cheap right now, why wouldn't you?
Well, you know what? We didn't have to fill up until yesterday when we drove to the closest White Castle, which I'm happy to report is so much closer than any of the White Castles we used to go to in college. So next time you're on this side, we can get to a White Castle in about 2.5 hours, buddy.
That's awesome.
If you want to go for the ride.
My stomach is screaming at you right now, but thank you.
I had 4 Imodium to start the day.
Nice.
And just a steady stream of Tums.
There you go.
So I survived it. I've cracked the code on how to beat the White Castle problem. All right. So I think that's everything for us. If you would like to share with Sejan some of the old games that you've been replaying or remakes that might be worth his time, he can be found on Twitter at Siege vs. the World.
And if you have any of those one and done pilots that Devin likes to dive into from time to time, send them our way because we like watching them and talking about them. But you can reach Devin at Devin D. Decker.
Please do. I love them. It is my favorite part of my media library is all of the quote unquote lost media that I have been able to collect that is specifically failed pilots. They're delicious. All right. William, if you can take a break from celebrating, please bring us home. Have a good one, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejan Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.